All right, so Connor is a friend of mine, and I've known him for quite some time at this point. But for those of you who don't, um, Connor was at Penn State with me. That's where I met him. He has since coached at. I'm probably gonna forget one of these schools, but he rode in high school at Glastonbury. After college, returned there to Glastonbury High School in Connecticut. Coached there for a couple years. He
Four
coached with
years.
4 years. Coached with the Trinity Men. Trinity Men.
Yep.
The MIT Open Weight Women, and is now the head girls coach at Boston Latin School. And
Yep. And also in Connecticut, I coached at River Furniture Capture, but that was just summer stuff.
okay, but one thing that I'm particularly excited to talk about tonight is Connor is also a teacher. He teaches physics, and I think more so than a lot of people I've met, Connor has put time into thinking about like the teaching aspect of rowing, sort of independent of the rowing stroke. So be prepared for me to ask questions about that. But other than that, take it away, Connor.
Yeah. So thanks for being here, guys. So going through video and stuff, I realized I lost a lot of my recordings from last fall. So I'm going to go through a bunch of stuff from our Florida training trip that happened in February. And it's just a nice little microcosm of, we had a crew that wasn't great at the start. We progressed a lot. And by the end of 4 or 5 days of rowing, a lot of practices, we had a decent crew going by the end of that. So let me resume my screen sharing here. All right, I sent out that YouTube playlist if anybody's interested. John and I got the screen sharing to work a little bit better today, so hopefully it's solid now. But just a little background on this crew. It's a very much a mix of stuff, of different rowers, like the stroke seat's a junior, 7-seat here is a sophomore, junior, sophomore. The 3-seat I saw for a week of winter training. She showed up to this trip, and I haven't seen her since this trip. The 2-seat's a junior, and the bow seat's a senior. So it's a very big mix of rowers, and it's interesting to see the dynamic between all of them and how they progress together through this week. So this was our first row. We just rigged the boat, reeling what the seat is, what the oar is, what it's like to not have an erg handle in your hand and just have an actual oar handle. And if we watch, it's not great. Very clearly we're rusty. Some of us haven't touched an oar since probably May. The bow seat, the 2-seat, we're both spring only rowers. And then the 6-seat here broke her leg in July, and this is the first time she's touched an oar since then. So let me go back to that first video. And as we can see, it's just timing's kind of all over the place. Handle heights are all over the place. Square timing's all over the place. Catches are not the worst ever, but not fantastic. One thing I will say I was happy with was they were doing their best to get the blade in and push hard, which can be a challenge a lot of the time just to get the pressure on it. But going into this spring break trip, I had things kind of planned out, and John wanted me to talk about like essentially lesson planning for rowing. And I had things planned out. I don't actually have a lot for my practices too far because we all know you get in the water and all of a sudden things look different and everything changes. I was expecting to spend a lot of time on the catches and just remembering how to put the ball in the water. And overall, this was all right. I don't want to say it's good. It's all right. in terms of individual. It's not together, but individual catches are solid. And for me right now, the biggest thing in this video on day one was like, we're just timing wise, we're not moving together, and we need to just release the blade together in order to have a boat that's prepped for us to actually put a good catch in the water. So I threw out pretty much everything I had planned out for this week, and we changed from my original plan, which was going to be catch work to start, and we actually started focusing on the release a little bit more. Well, we started with timing more than anything. So that was our first morning row. We see the bad time and the bad catches. And we just moved on to a lot of pause drills, just getting out of the water, hitting the individual positions correctly, and just remembering what it's like to get the different spots. And I don't have a ton of video of like individual drills we did. This is a pause, I think every 5 or so, just kind of 5 and glide kind of thing. And as you can see right there, we don't hit the pause together at all. It's release, stop, stop, stop. So that would be like the biggest thing that I started focusing on, was really gearing them to think about, hit that pause together. We'll find the balance as it goes, making sure that we're hitting each individual pause. And so like Jen wanted me to talk about is just like teaching a skill and how I go about it very similarly to how I would teach a lesson in physics, or right now I'm actually teaching math. But we need to establish essentially what's wrong, why it's wrong, what we want to do, what it's going to feel like is the big thing for me, especially with new rowers. Like they really need to understand, junior rowers need to learning what it is to feel the correct thing. And you get so many of them, and this is upper rowers too, where you change something, they think it feels wrong, and you're just like, no, it just feels different. Let's get that going. So when I teach a drill, I talk about the drill, what it's going to do, what it's going to feel like, and then why we're doing it. And that really helps with the buy-in of, the why is just so important. So with pause drills, I would explain to them, we're not moving together. We all know that we have to be 8 people doing the same thing at the same time. The set will come when we start doing that, because they all freak out about the set and they start doing too much. And it's like, let's just focus on the drill. And the big thing is doing the drill, really focusing on what it feels like. And then once the drill is completed, moving on to continuous rowing again, still thinking about the drill that we just did. And I find that helps a lot. So this is just, again, our first day getting it. This is already significantly better than it was. We can see, the more moving together. It's still on set. The 3 and 4, 5 seat are still skying like crazy. We're not putting the blades in quickly, but overall better. And this is still in the morning, heading back to the dock more or less. And it just got better. They haven't taken a stroke in 4 months, so it's understandable that we're messing things up.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Just sort of, you said that you wanted to, you just said, oh, don't worry about the set. Will you just will you generally try and do drills? Obviously you can't do every drill all 8, but will you sort of have people drop out and then, sort of just set up the boat so that you can focus on one thing at a time? Or do you always want, like you said, you always go into continuous rowing after you do the drill? Do you want it to be, do you, I don't really, let me think about what I'm asking. Do you always want it to sort of be in a more rowing, full stroke type situation versus dropping it down to pairs or 4s and just thinking about working from a stable platform and basic movements? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, what I just showed you was all 8 rowing. Yeah. I would say probably 75 to 80% of the practice I'm showing you is at 4s or 6s.
Okay.
Because like you said, the position helps them isolate stuff a lot better. That's one of the reasons I love coaching eights, is just because you have that stable position, and like you don't get the same speed in fours that you do. Like you can break a four down into rowing by pairs and get some good work done, but it's just not the same as breaking an eight into sixes. You can still get good heavy suspension with some good speed on it, so they feel what it's like when the boat's actually moving. But stable is always what we're going for when I'm doing drills. For the most part, obviously, there's always all eight drills that you need to work on, other stuff. But when it comes to teaching an individual skill, yeah, that stable platform first and really let them get the feeling for it. There's a saying in the teaching world, like there's really only one way to learn something, and that's to be taught it, to practice it 100 times, and that's like pretty much it. Like it's just, you need to learn it, then you need to practice it, and then you also need to practice it correctly. Nothing bothers me more than just doing a drill for the sake of doing a drill and just not doing it with a purpose. And these girls do a fantastic job with like listening and trying to apply things. We don't always apply it correctly, but we do a solid job. Like you said, so by sixes here, just breaking it down, relearning how to sit in a boat and whatnot. Probably after the first quarter of the practice, I would have gone straight back to just very basic fundamental rowing. I talked about just sitting on the seat, how to grip the handle. A lot of us don't have our hand all the way to the edge, or inside hand is down by the Concept 2 logo versus in a spot that's comfortable and powerful. Sitting up on our butt bones. I think it was Becky that said, we want to be getting our meat off the seat, but keeping the bones there, and just like how to sit. And just, re-going over fundamentals like that is hugely helpful. And that goes for teaching physics or teaching rowing. It's, I need to make sure my kids can add up to 2 + 2 before they start learning, quantum mechanics. But, John Wooden used to teach Bill Walton and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar how to put their socks back on and tie their shoes correctly. Making sure that our fundamentals are down is hugely important for at least my teaching. I assume just about every coach here does that as well. So pauses. That was most of our first day, was pauses. And you can see like it's just already so much better by the end of the first probably 2-ish hour row. And just having a goal in mind is huge as well. So this was the end of the morning here. A lot better compared to that first video. And a lot cleaner. Set's still not quite there. We're not finishing the stroke off, but the body movement's significantly better. 4 seat needs to put her blade in the water. 6 seats taking her first stroke since July. Things like that. So that was our first morning row. I don't know if there's any questions about that before I keep going.
Just quickly, so you talked about planning and having the athletes know what they're doing. How did you kind of frame how you guys were going to start and what the objectives were for the first couple rows here?
For the first row, not so much, because it was all of our first day back on the water. So I wanted to just kind of get on the water, see where we were at. I had a general plan, and I talked to them before, but mainly the goals I told them before we launched was like, let's get in the boat, let's figure out, let's just remember how to shake these cobwebs off. And I told them ahead of time, like, it's not going to be our best row ever. It's going to be shaky. We're not going to be perfect, but let's just see what we've got. In the afternoon, and then the rest of the rows, absolutely. I did a lot more of, this is what we're working on. This is our ultimate goal. I don't always do that off the water. I like to get on the water and do drill by drill by drill versus trying to give them a whole 15-minute pep talk that no one's going to listen to after 2 minutes anyways. So going drill by drill is usually what I find to work the best. Especially with junior rowers, maybe it works better at a higher level of rower, but understanding how the different rowers also operate. Some of them need that pre-talk, some of them just want to go, some of them prefer video, things like that. So the afternoon row, I had a much better idea of what we were trying to do. I don't know if that answers your question, Brendan.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So yeah, so going into the afternoon row, slightly different lineup. I think we had nine rowers on this trip. So we kind of rotated through. Everyone sat out at least one practice that week. So it changes day to day here, practice to practice really. But more of the same, very nice water. But this video really shows us how just not good our releases are, how much we're not taking the blades out together. We're not releasing together. The handle heights are kind of all over the place. And I would have moved on. This shows our rush as well. So like the 7 and the 8-seater were first varsity rowers in the fall. The 7-seat normally has a pretty solid catch, but you can just tell that she's just getting rushed up. Bow 5, bow 6 are in the water before the stern pair is even close to putting it in the water, and that's screwing up their catch. So again, just more timing stuff. Now we started to work on through there. So I labeled this one day 1 afternoon. So we did a bunch of pause drills, and if we look at it, it's still a little rushed, but it is definitely better. It's cleaner. Watch the releases in particular. We're coming out and off for the most part. I teach lower hands than most people probably do. But it's definitely, I hate this, can't get it to stop auto-playing. But if we just go through, you can watch out, off, away, bringing the top edge away versus flicking the bottom edge forward a lot better, which is what I like to teach. That's Kevin McDermott at Trinity is all about top edge away. I got that from him and that clean, quiet release. So we would have been doing pauses at this point, and it looks better there. And a lot of them were just trying to do too much. You got kids taking their first strokes again. So they're trying really hard to look good, and it was just not relaxed. And they started to figure out the relaxation a little bit better. And this is just a paddle row here, which I thought was interesting going through my video of just like, it was just longer. It was relaxed. It's not strong because they're getting ready to go back to the dock. We just finished up a sprint, more or less. I just thought that was an interesting one because it actually looked relaxed versus that forced, like really I need to finish the stroke and beat my handle and beat this set into the ground. It was just a solid paddle row. So for those of you that don't know my rowing, I do a thing called jungle rules at the end of every practice. It's just a fun little sprint, uncapped. I think it's fun. I've found that it makes our team very good at sprinting the last 250. Sometimes a little too good at sprinting the last 250, and we don't go early enough. But this is just a little quick sprint. They get to put a little pressure on it. But for the most part, it looked pretty good. So this is the end of day 2. If we compare that to the beginning of day 1, definitely a big improvement. Day 3 is where we started to make a lot of improvements. So day 3 is where I would say our teaching talk kind of goes out a little bit more of talking about differentiation of the different rowers. And for those of us that don't know Boston Public Schools very well, so this is Boston Lanton's school. It is the oldest public school in the country, opened in 1635. It is actually older than Harvard. It's a public school, but it is a test-in school. So all of these girls are very smart. They have to test in. in order to get into the school. They all graduate, go to very good colleges, things like that. So, and I think Brendan probably understands this as well, being an MIT coach. It's like these MIT rowers that I had last year and these BLS rowers that I have this year, compared to some other people that I've coached, they definitely learn in a slightly different way. I found that they're very receptive to visual aids, whereas at Glastonbury, I would say our video sessions weren't quite as helpful. Maybe I'm just a better coach now, 2 years later, which is definitely true. But they're very good with seeing it, and then the video session I like to show. Unfortunately, I don't have. I'll get there when I get there. So I like to show them the goal, like what we want it to look like. Going through all my video, I found I do a very bad job of recording our good rowing. I only ever record our bad rowing to make sure that they know what it looks like. And I don't do a great job of, like, you know, our 1V in the fall. I also lost a lot of footage, but I don't have anything from after Head of the Charles. And like pre-Head of the Charles row, all they can find is our live stream. So unfortunately, I don't have much of our higher performing rowers from BLS, but I do show them a lot of what I think is quality higher level rowing. In particular, I have video that I promised Mark Mendel I wouldn't share with anybody when he gave it to me. So I have, I think it's the 2014 Gonzaga High School crew that was very good. They made semis at Henley. And I just have a lot of video of them doing drills, of them steady stating, things like that. I really like to show that video to the girls. I wish I could show it to you guys, but he doesn't really want me sharing that stuff, which is understandable. But so video sessions for me is, let's look at the goal. Let's look at where we are now. And I showed them the video that you guys just saw, plus a little bit extra. And then they were all like, oh God, okay, so we really need to improve. And we talked about, all right, we're not taking the blade out of the water correctly. We're flicking the bottom edge forward. We're really finishing into our laps. We're not taking the top edge away. We're not moving together. And all of that is resulting into a bad catch. And therefore we can't get the pressure on it, even though we're ripping a lot of water. We're moving a lot of water, but we're not moving the boat. So that was very helpful. We had a very good day on after our second day. So if we just go through, so this was the morning after we just talked. We're still missing a lot of water, but I think it got through to them. Just immediately you can see that we're moving a little smoother. It's in their heads that, okay, we really need to focus on moving together. We need to take the top edge away. One thing that also helped, you'll notice I had a lineup switch. I moved that 6 seat into 8 seat. I just helped a lot. Won't get into why I did that, but it helped a lot. It's not super strong, but it is a lot cleaner, and it's definitely faster than the day before, even though we might not be cranking on it quite as hard. It's just better rowing. We're still missing a ton of water. If we look at the catch here, you know, we're squared. We're still kind of squaring up versus squaring down to the water, and we're not connected until now. So we're all at about 3/4 slide before we even get our blades on. But if we look at, YouTube's being funky here. So if we ignore our 8 seat that's already out of the water, for the most part, you'll see 4 seat does a solid job. Jess in the 6 seat does a solid job of not throwing quite as hard as we were the day before, taking the top edge away, and then bringing the top edge towards the bow. And generally what I like to see is, and this is such a scratch crew of rowers, I wasn't going too hard with late squaring. I was okay with a slightly earlier square. I might show my 1V later of, I prefer a later square, squaring down to the water, so that like last quarter of a stroke of recovery, we're placing the blade in, and then we drive. But we're still getting the handle on our rowing again here. But we're all squared together for the most part, and then we're connected. So we're missing water, but the rowing is definitely a lot better. Just let that go here. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in while we watch this.
Is the square down distinction versus, I know, just like sort of different ways of saying the same thing. Is that something you feel particularly strongly about?
Sorry, what was that, Johnny? Cut out?
The square up versus square down.
Square up, square down, yeah. I can't say I feel incredibly strongly about it. At the end of the day, it is semantics. As long as you're teaching your students what the right thing is, I don't think it makes a huge difference. But I will say, I just like the term better, and if it makes a 5% difference in the thought process of squaring up, just to me, it sounds like squaring up, you're bringing that blade up to the sky and then bringing it down, versus what I always say is square down is we're bringing that bottom edge towards the water. We really want to bring that bottom edge towards the water. If we look at that's some glacier video of kind of showing this off. Yeah, right here. So this is 2016. Yeah, this is a pretty solid crew. But if we look at probably 3C usually does a good job with this. These blades aren't painted, unfortunately, but if we bring that bottom edge towards the water, it's a lot better. It's still not great. This was pretty early in this season as well. But if we look at, squaring up, I can't draw on the screen right now, but yeah, this video isn't as good as I thought it was. I just think you're bringing the blade to the water. You should be saying square down, because that's what you're doing. You're bringing the bottom edge to the water. You're not bringing the top edge up. You want to bring the blade towards. Let me see if I got a video. I don't know how to do this. So this is just some slow motion rowing. I love slow motion rowing, but watch the 7-seat. She does a solid job of too much layback, but bringing the bottom edge to the water versus even the 5-seat, who does a nice job for the most part of not quite catching it, but
When you say slow motion rowing, you just mean like sort of exaggerating like the time on the recovery?
Yeah. I like slow motion rowing. I think it's a good drill. It's a good drill for a heavy boat. You can really feel the drive. But you'll see your better rowers, your higher performing rowers can do slow motion perfectly. It will look like a perfect stroke. If they can't do it perfectly in slow motion, they are not going to be able to do it in fast motion. Like, you're not going to do it at 36. If you see mistakes at an 18, they're going to be making the same mistakes at a 36. Just because it's faster doesn't mean it's better. But back to day 3 stuff here. Again, still a lot better on the rush, better timing. For these drills, at this point, we would have been doing probably 2-part pauses, a lot of half feather rowing, which I love. It's a great drill. It really gets them to think about taking that top edge away versus just letting the oarlock do all of the work for you. You still want to control what you're doing. You want to be in control of what your blade is doing and things like that. So not just letting it clunk right back into the oarlock. We want it to take it out, take the top edge towards the bow. Don't splash your coxswain with your bottom edge splash. Just let that go. The next video is we worked on catches after this. So it's definitely better. This video shows 7-seat's getting her catch back a little bit. We lost the rush. we're still not connecting right away. It's, you know, we're getting on a little before 3/4 versus that 3/4 position. So it can definitely be improved, but it's definitely getting there. And the day 3 stuff was, I think you guys can all see the vast improvement, especially after that video. And they were really focused on it. And that's huge. I was talking to John earlier this morning about differentiation and just talking about the audio visual stuff. These girls respond hugely to visual. At Glastonbury and Hartford as well, I did a lot more demonstrations on the dock, a lot more tactile of physically moving their bodies around. At Trinity, we have tanks, which is nice because you can really get, you know, move their hands, move their backs. So those guys did well with that. Kevin swears by tanks. I'm mediocre on them. They're useful when they're useful. I know Jesse talked about this on his US rowing webinar last week, and if anybody didn't watch that one, everyone should, because that was a really good talk of just like making sure that you're going to everybody's needs and making sure that they understand. I think that's one thing a lot of coaches that I've seen don't check for understanding. That's a big thing that I especially learned, you know, especially in my student teaching actually last semester. Was one of the things I got was moving on too quickly. Like I'd teach, you know, forces, and I just give them, I wouldn't check for understanding. When I started giving them, and it feels so long, just 10 to 15 seconds after an explanation, it gives them time to actually mull it over, think about it, and you'll get so many better questions from your athletes and so many better questions from your students, because they're trying to comprehend, and if you just move too quickly, you're not giving them a chance to think about it. You'll get better drills, I find. You'll get just a better understanding from all the rowers, and that's what we're trying, I hope, assuming we're all trying to get from our rowers, is getting them to understand the reason we do certain stuff, how to do it, and the why we do it.
Connor, what with Glastonbury, you're saying that they're primarily visual learners. What accounts for that? You were referencing that for Kevin. You think that they're more tactile because you have the resources of a tank and stuff. Just
Yeah.
curious what defines the cruise as more visual for on a whole. I'm sure they're not all visual.
Yeah. It is definitely, I think a lot of it is resources and just what you can actually get done. But even at Glastonbury, when I was there, we never had a boathouse, rowing wise. Coaching, we got a boathouse, pretty much rowed out of there full time my second/third year. And we had a nice TV in there, and I do video, and it helped, but it just never seemed to get through to them the way I expected it to. I don't know really what the reason for that is. It just wasn't. They responded a lot better to me physically demonstrating on the dock, and then just the auditory instruction from the launch. I just felt they did a lot better than that. Versus, and maybe it's just because, you know, the BLS kids and the MIT kids were, I say smarter, but you know, that higher level of a testing school in MIT, they've just learned that way for so long. That's how they respond. They're just better at lectures and things like that. For Trinity, again, having the tank was nice. Having a ton of ergs is really nice. Their boathouse is fantastic for that. It just seemed to work well. And I think that's one of, if I'll brag about myself right now, is one of my skills as a coach is developing the relationship and managing the personalities and figuring out what students learn better which way. Not all, including Coxon's, not all 11 of these girls learned the same way that week. Some of them made instant progress from the video, but not all of them did. And some of them really did better with just audio instruction. So it is, so much of teaching is developing a relationship with your students, with your athletes, and learning who they are as people and how they personally learn. So for BLS right now, we learn really well with video. Unfortunately, we don't have a boathouse that's very conducive to that, so we have to watch it on my small iPad, but they do a great job with it. Maybe next year or 2 years, they don't learn so well from that, and we'll go to more hands-on stuff and really managing. You know, we're on the erg right now. It's nice to adjust posture while they're sitting down on the erg, things like that. So adjusting your teaching to the individual is really important. It also goes, people always ask me, because especially at Riverfront, I coach literally everybody from the middle schoolers, male, female, to the 80-year-old learn to row masters team stuff. Just understanding how each person rows. And they always ask me, what's the difference between, because I just essentially got roped into being a girls coach because that was the position that was open. I don't particularly care. I just like to work with people that are serious about rowing. He was asking me, what's the difference between coaching girls and coaching boys? And there's obviously some strength differences, hip flexibility differences, things like that. But I don't find there's a huge difference in the way I approach my teaching towards male or female, because for me, it's a very individually focused thing. Obviously, we're coaching a boat, but we need to address the individual needs of each person. And in this video right here, the 8-seat, she responds really well to just getting yelled at. She's strong as hell, and she just wants to get faster. So she's really good, versus the bow seat here, a little bit more mild-mannered. She needs to be, you need to be a little bit more patient with her. You need to let her figure it out and just essentially be nicer, be more patient, be more soft-handed with that kind of thing. Did that answer your Hap? I was a little long-winded there.
Yeah, I mean, that was good. Yeah.
And like, to even go more long-winded, when I was teaching, when we were actually in school, not that we will be for the rest of the year, I had 4 or 5 different physics classes. Each of them learned differently. I had one class that I loved teaching. They were so much fun. I could be sarcastic. They'd be sarcastic right back. And I'd have other classes that were just really quiet. And the best way for them to learn was just the kind of, I don't want to say boring, but essentially just a more direct approach to teaching. It's every crew, every person you have is definitely a little bit different.
So the stop for understanding, you think is sort of a tool you can use to determine, just by picking up on how much people are understanding one way versus another, you can sort of begin to determine the best way to teach a certain group.
Yeah, for sure. For me, one of the best feelings I get as a teacher is when a student or a rower asks a really good question. It indicates to me that they're, for one, listening, 2, they're developing the understanding to be able to even ask a question that is deep and thoughtful. So if they're asking good questions, it means you're probably doing something right. Hopefully, if it's not, questions they should have learned their novice year, but just even time it out yourself. That would be one thing. I started doing that in my teaching, is just when I was working on it, I'd literally count to 10 in my head. And if I didn't get a question, I'd move on. Hopefully it means we understand it, but giving them that 10, 15 seconds, it feels like an eternity, but to them it's not, because their brain's turning. They don't understand this stuff yet. So while their gears are turning, it just gives them time to think about it, really. All right, well, no other questions. I'll move on to more video here.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in on that note. Something I really like to do as long as it's warm enough and it's not windy, is after doing drills like this, stopping and kind of asking for the athlete feedback, independent of questions, and trying not to lead them into, not telling them at that point what they should be feeling, asking them, how are you experiencing this, and trying to get a little bit more input from them. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, that's huge, Brennan. I really agree with that. One thing, especially with with higher level rowers that really start to understand the stroke, the 1V, 2V, you'll do a piece and you can stop and talk to them and be like, what felt like this? Because you see it and hopefully what's wrong. But, just asking them how they felt about it, you have great conversations. And so much of that, I feel, is, again, building those relationships. You don't get to have those honest conversations until that you really understand how the different athletes work, the different people work, all the different personalities blend together, and allowing people to come out of their shell a little bit and really get them talking about what's happening, thinking about what's happening. And then you also get to understand their understanding of the stroke. If they're complaining about, there being no pressure, but you really see that there's the boat's rushing, hopefully they can either figure out themselves, like Brent said, not leading them towards that, but if they don't start picking it up on that, you can help them lead, figuring out the causes, and that helps them understand the stroke. If they figure it out themselves, it's so much more powerful than you just telling them don't rush the slide. They need to be able to feel what rushing the slide actually feels like. Hopefully you have a good coxswain that knows how to do that. I've been very fortunate in that.
Yeah, it's like that sounds like the teach somebody to fish and they'll never
Right.
go hungry. Giving
Don't teach a man to fish. Fishing's not that hard. I'm trying to think. I'm just going through my notes here. I had some stuff written down just in general before I move. Yeah, so just keep going through the video here.
Oh, I had a question.
Yeah, John.
Oh, you say you've been fortunate to have good coxswains. Have you ever been in a situation where, like, I don't know, as someone who rowed, teaching coxswains is difficult for me, difficult on the best of days. Do you have any experience on just sort of that in general?
Coaching cox is such a loaded question. Part of it, I feel like I've done a solid job of doing it. 6 years I've been coaching, which isn't a ton. I've still got so much to learn. And I was fortunate. My first started coaching, I had a fantastic coxswain my first year coaching, which helped so much. And I had some coxswains come up through there that were already pretty good, and I feel like I helped them develop. I mean, John, you were in a boat with me at Charles. You understand, Kira was a good coxswain. That was my second 1V coxswain, my second year coaching. But just having a good understanding of what they need to be learning, and starting from their novice year, I think is huge. Trying to put this into the right words here. They need to understand less about motivation. Motivation, coxswain's job is not to motivate the athletes. I hate that crap. Their job is to get the athletes to, refocus on what they're supposed to be focusing on. They need to have a good understanding of this. I don't think they're a separate, everyone uses the term coach in the boat. I don't think they're that. I think they're a leader in the boat. They're the neutral observer, essentially. And just getting them to understand the stroke. As coaches, we all have a good understanding of the stroke. We're just trying to impart that into our coxswains, and understanding helping them develop their leadership skills, I think, is one of the biggest things that I found works the best. I had at Glastonbury, I had a 3V coxswain her junior year, and she was just kind of laissez-faire, whatever. But I started talking to her about being a little bit more aggressive with her calls and like testing her knowledge on things. And we helped build her knowledge back up and really focus on that. And she ended up she was our 2V coxswain the next year and did just a phenomenal job. She was a very strong leader, and it's just helping develop those skills, not only in your coxswains, but in all of your rowers, but especially your coxswains, because they need to be the leader in the boat once you shove them off and you don't see them again for 40 minutes on race day. I don't know if that answers your question, John. Kind of went off in a different direction on that one. One thing with coxswains I find is just make the damn call. Be wrong, but make a call. Nothing irks me more than when a coxswain is just sitting there after giving an instruction to them. It's like, I'd rather have you make a wrong call, and then being supportive in that growth. They're going to make wrong calls, especially when they're just learning. You got a middle school team. Those coxswains don't know what's going on, and you're on the Charles River. Like, it can get dangerous sometimes, and the most dangerous thing you can do is just sit there while Harvard's trying to dock at full speed. Like, you need to get your boats moving. So setting the expectations with them is huge. Making sure that they know what they should be doing, giving them very clear instructions. When you don't give clear instructions, because you're not perfect, letting them ask questions, wanting them to ask questions. And then once things are answered, making sure that they actually just do it, act on it. And that, I find that helps build up their confidence. If they're not confident, they're not going to be able to instruct other kids on what to do. So building up their confidence and just being patient with them. You know, they're going to be wrong. Hold steady on your expectations, but don't be a dick about that. For me, I've always found, you know, the firmest hand is a gentle one. Be gentle, be patient, let them know what they did wrong, and then just move on. That's the way that learning works. That's what I find works best in the classroom and works best on the water, is just being patient with everybody. No one's there to suck. Okay. We're hitting up an hour here. I won't go too much more. But talking about releasing here, better releases, you can see that we're taking out and off, bringing the hands down. Again, I teach lower hands than probably most people do. I just like low hands, gives you more room to set the boat, more room for mistakes. A lot of people will probably disagree with me on that, but it's good enough for Saugatuck. It's probably good enough for us. This is just steady stating. We just think back to the first video. They did a great job. They listened, they cared, they wanted to get better, and they did a very nice job. It's very far from perfect. It's not our best rowing we did all week, but it's getting there. It's solid. We need to get more on it and just suspend. And then this is our last day, unfortunately, day 5. We had some nasty wind. I think Sean was actually just downstream from us. We were at Stetson. It was pretty windy that day. So we didn't get to row our last day, unfortunately, but we did do end of the day, 4th day with some sprints. We're not connecting right away, but we can see, you know, we're taking it away. We're not splashing too much out of the release. And just moving, trying to have some fun with it, which is always key, always having fun with it. Set a culture of hard work and fun.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, creating the right culture. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that matter? As like, I don't know, having seen the collegiate, like creating differences in creating a culture between collegiate programs and high school programs, or is it like is there less difference than a lot of people might make it out to be?
I think there's less of a difference, and it's all that stuff's the same. You talk to any excuse me. you talk to any coach at the peak of their game, they all set up a pretty similar culture. And Gladstone's talked about it on many occasions. If no one's listened to Gladstone's talk on setting up culture, do it. But it's like I think his talks are fantastic about that. I personally subscribe to anything John Wooden has ever said or done. He was probably the greatest coach to have ever existed in any sport. If anybody hasn't listened to his TED Talk, I would recommend that. Of just setting up a culture where it's about getting better every day, making sure that the kids understand that you're supposed to make mistakes. You're not going to PR every day. You're not going to, maybe you did a really good 8x500 last week. You did an 8x500 2 weeks later, and you just had a bad day. We had, throughout winter training, we had a nasty flu come through, and we lost so much progress, but it was just about, moving forward and just getting better every day, making each day your masterpiece, whatever quote you want to use from there. And just making sure that kids enjoy themselves more than anything. Like it's hard work. The sport's miserable. I don't know why any of us do it, but we all love it. And imparting that, the kids see that, and whether you love the sport or not comes through. So really setting that up, really enjoying it. John, you ask the same thing that I do every day is, what's your girls know what today is?
It's a beautiful day for rowing.
It's a great day for rowing. I make sure that we're out there to have fun. If we look at this stupid video I took, this is a thing we came up in high school. I don't understand where it came from, but you're all lay down on the boat and then you take a stroke from here. And the kids love it. It's so stupid. It takes 5 seconds and they love it. And it just, it just makes it happy. It's a good time. And that's personally why I love coaching so much and love teaching so much, is just being with the kids, whether it's collegiate or juniors, masters rowers, some masters rowers, and just having fun with it. There's no substitute for just the life that teaching brings. It's just so much fun to be with the kids. They're always a riot. There's a famous poem of Ask Me Why I Teach, and it ends, the famous line from it is, where could I find more splendid company? You can't, because it's just so much fun. And when you get a team that's just cruising and they're working their butts off and it's competitive while still being supportive, I think that's key, competitive and supportive. It's just, there's nothing better than that. So in terms of setting up a culture, make it competitive, make it fun, really set expectations. They need to know that they're there to work hard, but help them through it, be patient, and things like that. In terms of teaching, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Being patient.
Sounds good. I guess
anybody else got any questions? I mean, I feel like I've just been talking for an hour.
I just wanted to say, Conor, you talked earlier about being adaptable to the different learning abilities. And I think on that closing note about culture is being adaptable and recognizing that not every team is the same. Because there's some very serious junior teams, there's some more relaxed junior teams, there's very serious college teams and more relaxed teams. And, what works one place you can't just carry that into a different program and expect it to work.
Yeah, and part of that is, one thing I didn't talk about is just having your own coaching philosophy is huge. In Connecticut, to coach at public schools, you have to go through some training stuff, and they make you develop a coaching philosophy. And for me, that was one of the biggest helpers for me at the beginning of my coaching career, was actually writing that down. And understanding what you want your program to be. Not, like Brent said, there's junior programs out there that are just there to get kids on the water, which is fantastic. Getting kids on the water is awesome. That's what Riverfront Summer Rowing was all about. It was just about, let's get these kids to understand what the sport is. But if you want to be fast, you need to have certain expectations. If you're okay with just going out there and getting some strokes in, have different expectations. It's all different stuff.
Anyone else? Any other questions? No? All right.
Well, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, everybody. Hope I
Yeah, no,
didn't.
thanks a lot, Connor.
Yeah, thanks for presenting.
Thanks for being
Thanks,
here, guys.
Connor.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I'm going to stop the recording now.